I'm Michael Levine Clark. I'm from the University of Denver Libraries, and I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves when they get up to speak. But we're here to talk about materials for course use in academic libraries, and we have different perspectives on that, and actually giving different types of presentations about different aspects of that topic. But we're all interested in thinking about what the role of the academic library is and should be in the realm of curriculum support. For many years, I think, for too long, we've heard this sort of statement from academic libraries, right? We don't do textbooks. Why would we do textbooks? Textbooks are expensive. They're not. They change editions rapidly and often for no real good reason. They are summary treatments of material that we already have the primary content for. However, by saying we don't do textbooks, what we've really said is we don't support teaching. The academic library is about research. And that's, I think, a big mistake. And I think I've been guilty of it. I think we've all been guilty of it. Academic libraries historically haven't purchased textbooks because or at least not to support courses, because we deemed them to be too expensive, and we worried about just the difficulty of keeping up with so many editions, which is a real problem. We've often purchased textbooks not because of course adoption, but because we thought they were a good introduction to a topic, so we might happen to have a textbook for that reason. But that decision had nothing to do with the fact that that textbook was being used in a course. We also have historically put textbooks on course reserve. Often those have not been a part of the library collection. They've been a personal copy from the instructor. Sometimes we might buy one for a course at an instructor's request, but we certainly don't have a policy of doing it consistently. We also have other issues about supporting textbooks and the availability of course-assigned readings in libraries. Really big problem is that in many cases publishers restrict access to eBooks that have a high chance of course adoption. And I'm talking here about general scholarly monographs, not things that are written as textbooks. But there are many publishers who treat these things differently because they know that they are going to have thousands and maybe even tens of thousands of sales for a book that otherwise might only sell a couple hundred copies. And they worry about what happens if they make it available in libraries. We also have other restrictions on access that e-textbooks are often not available to libraries. They're available through other sources. And pricing is generally very expensive if you were to try to think about a campus-wide solution for textbooks. So it's not an easy thing to think about, but it's a really big issue. Textbook affordability is something that we are hearing about all over the place. It's sometimes being expressed as a need for open educational resources, but it's from a student perspective, the issue is I'm assigned this textbook and I can't afford to buy it. We know that many students don't buy a textbook at all, and they go through the course without that textbook. There's lots of evidence of that rather than buying the assigned text, they just try to do without. We also know that even when, and that they also share textbooks and sometimes use an older edition. And so there are lots of reasons why trying to have a textbook available through a library would help students across the board. I already said this, but I'll say it again. Refusing to acquire books for course use or opting out of that sends the message to the institution that the library is about research and not about teaching. I think that's a really big mistake. So what happens when libraries already have textbooks in their ebook collections? And that's what my portion of this presentation is going to be about. So in some cases, there are textbooks that are part of our packages. And I have data from Springer Nature for for the US and Canada, for all libraries that have the Springer Nature ebooks. And we have usage data, including the textbooks. And so I'm looking at this for a white paper that'll come out in 2019. That'll include an analysis of usage data and then some case studies at individual institutions that have used these books. And I'm going to present the data set, and then Bob Boise is going to present the case studies from Springer Nature. So the data set is all usage for all libraries in the US and Canada from 2013 through July of 2018. It's for ebook packages published published after 2005, so 2005 through 2018. It also includes a back file collection of mathematics and statistics titles. So it's math and statistics back to as far back as those materials go, plus everything else from 2005 to 2018. And it's almost 100,000 titles in this package. Over that time period, almost all of those titles were used at least once in some library across the US and Canada. And there were almost 1 billion chapter downloads across that time period. Most of those, not surprisingly, in the US, but a sizable amount of use in Canada as well. Only about 6,500 or 6,700 of these titles are, or 5,700 of these titles are textbooks. 4,300 of them are titles that are designated as graduate or advanced undergraduate textbooks, and 1,386 of them are undergraduate textbooks. Most of these were used over that 5-year period, and there were a lot of downloads of these titles. And so this is significant usage we're talking about. It's not a small amount of usage, and it's, I think, possible because there's so much usage across so many libraries to try to tease out trends about textbook usage across this broad pool of content. Here's the subject breakdown of all of these almost 100,000 titles. The largest portion, almost 14%, are in math and statistics, and a far lower percentage in these other areas, but there's a pretty wide range of content here. This slide didn't transfer over very well, but you could see that my 2 textbook labels were supposed to be inside this circle. They used to be. Anyway, the 2 slices of pie that are pulled out are the textbooks across this whole collection, right? You can see 42%, the large blue piece of pie, is monographs. 4.43% of the overall package is graduate and advanced undergraduate textbooks, and about 1.5% are undergraduate textbooks. So a small portion of the overall collection. And here's usage by ebook type in the US and Canada over this time period. The blue is the percentage of titles available. So to read this, about 42% of the titles available are monographs, right? That first really high blue bar. The orange bar is the percent of titles used, and so the percentage of titles used is pretty similar from category to category. And then the percentage of chapters downloaded is the lighter bar. And so only 20% of the chapters that are downloaded in this collection are monographs, even though they're 42% of the overall. What's interesting, I think, is that in textbooks, they account for a really high percentage of the downloading relative to the overall availability and to the title usage. You can see there that handbooks also behave that way, reference sources, as do conference proceedings, which is interesting. So textbooks together in these 2 categories of textbook, account for 5.85% of the content, but 13.4% of the chapters used. Right? So there's a higher amount of usage than you would expect given its overall availability. Here's a breakdown just comparing the Canada and the U.S. In the U.S., this is sort of overall use and then just 1 year of use, right? So the first side of this screen is is usage across the 5 years that we studied the data, and then just a single year of usage. And similar in both of them, right? There's a smaller percentage of titles and this high amount of overall usage, right? So in 2017, almost 15% of the usage of this entire pack of this content was textbooks in the US, and about 11% in Canada, even though it only accounted for 5.8% of the available titles. Okay, and now, so here's another way of looking at it by subject. This is just all of the subject availability. So the percentage of chapter downloads by subject across all years. Computer science is the highest, and it goes down from there. These categories account for almost all of the usage, all of the subject usage in the entire collection. And so I'll blow them up on the next slide. Right, these are the top 12 downloads by subject. And here we have the actual usage compared to that availability, right? And so there is some variability in terms of usage relative to availability by subject, as we saw that there's also relative differences by whether it's a textbook or not. Computer science is a higher percentage of downloads than you would expect based on its availability. Business and economics is lower than you would expect. Here's that same kind of breakdown, but just for textbooks. And in almost all cases, the textbooks are used either pretty close to their availability or higher than you would expect. So if you look at chemistry, for instance, it's higher than you would expect. Redo what I said about this slide. This is the percentage of textbook availability. So this is just the textbooks. And then the percentage of textbook usage. So the blue line is the percentage of textbooks that fall into that subject area out of the overall textbook availability. The blue line is the percentage of textbook usage out of all usage of textbooks. And in some areas they match fairly closely, in others they don't match as well as you would expect. So business and economics there's actually a lower percentage of usage than you would expect based on this measure, and in chemistry there's a higher. And obviously in the white paper we will dig into this subject breakdown in much more detail. We'll think about it a lot more carefully. This is a really high level overview of that. Here's a different look at the same idea. This is the textbook downloads as a percentage of all downloads in that subject. Okay, so within mathematics and statistics, textbooks are about 20% of that subject, but account for about 45% of the downloads in that subject. In almost all of these cases, the textbooks account for double or so or more of the usage in that subject area, which is I think pretty significant, and I think shows the value of having textbooks as part of an ebook collection, and is probably something that we could follow through and say, is this true for books that are not textbooks but that are adopted in courses? So monographs that are used in courses. We haven't done that part of the study yet, but that's an important question. So here's just a quick glance at some of the usage just for 1 year. That was for 5 years. This is just a year. And I'm doing a different analysis here. This is downloads per title used. So there are 4,000 in medicine. The first bar, there are 4,000 downloads for every title that gets used. And then the downloads per textbook is also higher, but this is not consistently true across all of the subject areas. Here's the interesting. Some of these have relatively few textbooks in that particular subject, right? So third from the bottom, political science and international studies only has 2 textbooks. So I'm not sure you can draw too much from some of these. you can certainly draw something from mathematics and statistics that has 2,800 textbooks. And then finally, here's just another look at sort of how textbooks stack up by subject. In the first bar, the blue is the percentage of textbooks available. The next is the percentage of textbooks used, and the last is the percentage of textbook chapter downloads. And in chemistry and math and chemistry and material science and medicine, I think are really interesting in that they are much higher than the rest of these in terms of the percentage of textbook downloads versus the overall usage. And there's maybe something worth looking into in those particular subject areas as we try to think more about the value of having textbooks in academic library collections. So this was a high-level overview. When we write the white paper, there will be much more much more analysis than is possible in a 15-minute talk. But Bob is going to go into detail on some case studies that are at particular institutions or using particular titles from this data set to try to get a sense of what happens when you go from 30,000 feet down to the ground. Okay, so I'm going to turn it over to Bob.
Okay, very good. If you haven't opened up your Charleston conference bag yet, the little bag with the Against the Grain current issue, you'll notice that it is library supportive institutional curricula. I think this probably was planned, but anyway, there's more reading about this topic in your current issue of Against the Grain. I want to make sure I plug it. Yeah, I want to talk about some case studies we did, and this is more to do, I guess, a little bit with policy than to show that my straw poll. Some of you weren't here when I did my straw poll at the beginning. I asked how many in academic libraries have a kind of an active or deliberate policy to collect certain items for classroom use, and how many kind of really don't have that policy, and it was about 50-50. So if you didn't hear that, and that is my experience talking to librarians as well, that there is some active and some not so active policy. So this first slide comes about because I was kind of corrected at a Charleston conference not that long ago about open education resources versus affordable resources. And I have to agree that that's true. Open education resources, I do understand, are open, truly open, and open enough to be shared across campuses and used however they need to be used. So that's fine, and I accept that definition. That means that they're available for free to the students. Effectively, what they are is available free to the students unless they need a print copy, and usually print costs are recovered. Let's say, $20, $25 for printing out some open education resources if that's what the student wants to do. Yeah, and then of course many libraries are involved with funding open education resource projects, or there's some other funding coming in. So generally speaking, there's some kind of, not always, but some kind of incentives going on and that kind of thing for open education resources. On the other hand, when I talk about your licensed resources, I'm talking about affordable, okay? So there's an obvious price that publishers are putting on this. We're selling you eBooks, and then you are making them available to students for no cost. You're having the same effect as OER, but you're the agent that's making that possible. And then of course in a printed form, at least for our company, a print-on-demand copy of any textbook is $24.99, which is the equivalent of an OER print out of that material if the student wants a printed copy at an affordable price. So the difference really between the two things is that an affordable curriculum resource, an affordable licensed ebook from a publisher like ourselves, yeah, it can't be shared. You can't just give it to another university down the road or another college, and we understand that. So it's not the same as an OER. And I just want to be real clear about that. I do understand that. We do allow electronic interlibrary loan. And of course, the following slides relate to Springer Nature stuff because that's all the data that I can get my hands on. The first example is active collection development to support curriculum on the campus. And Christy Wilfong at Bates College helped me with this. She and I worked together a little bit. I came up with the data. This is, again, is a 5-year study of eBook use from our portfolio that they have on the Bates College campus. It turned out that all 10 of the top downloaded eBooks on that campus were textbooks after that 5-year period, during that 5-year period. All textbooks. And that is a direct result of Bates College taking a very active approach with their collection development. And I don't know if you can see the numbers, they're too small, but all this data will be available to you in slides later. But I think it's worth pointing out that over that period, the equivalent book downloads and against the retail price of those books, if they were bought as textbooks in the bookstore, would have been $136,000. Now that's a small campus, that's a small liberal arts campus. That's a big impact on the for the purchase that they made of the eBooks packages. Let's keep going. I just wanted to let you know that the kind of uses I think Michael alluded to, the kind of textbooks that we on the Springer side publish are not the ones that are probably going to be used in the 100 course, right? They're going to be used in these 300 level courses. You see some of the courses that are textbooks are listed up there. I won't go over them. They're in italics. But things like big data and economics taught in the winter terms, then understanding analysis. It's a real analysis book taught in these other courses. In a real analysis course. I mean, these are students that are going to be mathematicians and economists, right? This isn't people dabbling around in the subject. Then you get plate tectonics, which is taught in the seminar Appalachian Geology, and we do publish a law and criminology books, so sociology course in crime and justice. So the point is, these are upper level courses taught at a liberal arts college. But the real point is that their science librarian goes out, talks to their faculty, and presents licensed ebooks that are available permanently to the campus, no DRM, unlimited concurrent use, all the things that make free to the student, easy to administrate, and they suggest, don't tell, suggest to the various, usually it's the science faculty, mathematics faculty, that these are available if you want to use them, and they have used them. So that's, I think, a happy ending for the deliberate approach to curriculum collection development. The next case is I got some Navstar data. Navstar data basically tells me where our books have been used in courses on campuses across the country. And it turned out that a particular textbook of ours had been used at 41 different campuses. I did a random sample of those 41 campuses, and I came out with, I kept sampling until I found schools that had both had our ebooks, including that textbook, and were teaching that course, and at least some that didn't have our e-textbook, but were still teaching the course. So it came out with 10 that did have the ebook and 3 that did not have the ebook. And just ran this little sample. And in this case, it's a book, Transmission Electron Microscopy. It's used to teach material science courses. It's used for budding material scientists to learn their trade. And I put up the retail cost of those. Basically, they were probably all using the 2009 edition, and that's a $99 book at retail price. All right, so this is the next slide shows you what was happening. We have schools that are large and small, Northwestern, Stanford, UCal, Berkeley, and these are the ones that all had the e-textbook, right? Had it available on their campus. Some of them seem to be getting a lot of book downloads. I studied this. This takes you back from 5 years to just one. So this is just the most current year. I was looking for what happened to this textbook in the most current year. And in some cases, like the top one is Columbia, they got 14 whole book downloads. That's about right. For this kind of a course, in high-level material science, 14 downloads of the ebook seems about right to me. And then you go on to MIT, 26 downloads, and some of the other ones, 10 downloads. You get over to Northwestern, and they're very enthusiastic about material science. They've downloaded the book the equivalent of 50 times. And then you get out to UCal Berkeley, and you get really a lot of enthusiasm for this particular 151 times. Retail value of that is $20,000 in 1 year, right, for one textbook. And so this gives you a sense of, other schools that had the e-textbook, very little downloads at all. What happened there? I don't know. Maybe the students just said, I want the print, and the bookstore version is fine. Maybe something else happened. I don't know. But they didn't make use of the e-textbook that they had. It's a case of, in those things, I might go back to those libraries and say, maybe you should tell that faculty member that you have this, just in case the faculty member doesn't know that you have it, because they're teaching from it. And I'll move on. This is the part where there's 3 schools that ended up teaching from the textbook, but they didn't have the textbook. I looked at denials. Long story short, they didn't really have that many denials. It wasn't like people were grasping for the ebook when they didn't have it. There was some denials, but not that many. And so, you could say, well, those schools knew well enough not to buy the package or something like that. But certainly, they did teach the course at those schools. So anyway, moving on from that, a little policy about Springer Nature. We sell in packages and all that. This particular textbook was in Chemistry Material Science 2009. And we don't sell textbooks through aggregators. So textbooks are it's the light and the dark, the yin and the yang of textbooks with us. But I will say, even though I'm warned a little bit about this, but we do have an evidence-based model now where you can put a little money up front and use the books for a period of time, and then pick your favorite things that got used a lot. So we have an evidence-based model now called My Collection. That's the end of the pitch. Anyway, for us, if you want to look at textbooks for us, it would be a very deliberate process of assessing packages and things like that. And the last case is the mega school with the mega use. And thanks to Bill Malterick, I can talk about NYU a little bit in the open here. This is a school that is special because they have a dual hosting situation. They have an instance of eBrary with all our books hosted locally, as well as access to all the same books, which is a very complete portfolio of ours that they can get on SpringerLink. So when I talk about use on SpringerLink, that's only part of their access. The rest of it is hidden to me. I don't know what access they get on eBrary. So it's more than this. But the access I know about is 1.7 million Springer Nature ebook chapters downloaded in the last year, all right, up until October. Now, so it's a big school, lots of downloads. 18 of the top 50 books downloaded were textbooks. That's out of, there's 50,000 total ebooks downloaded at least once during the year. 1,425 undergrad textbooks, almost 3,000 were advanced undergraduate textbooks. So of all the books that were used at least once, 8.68% of those books were textbooks. But then you kind of go further into it and you find that undergraduate textbook chapters represented 3.4% of the total downloads. Advanced undergrad textbooks were 9.08%. So you get 12.5%. Now, Michael talked about, like numbers like 13 and 14% in the big study. Downloads were textbooks over everybody using all the content for 5 years. So, 12.5% is a huge school with pretty much all our content. 12.5% is going to be textbooks. And Bill would be the first one to say, you know, we don't have a policy of collecting for classes. Our portfolio is big because we're big. And the use that happens from textbooks just happens. Okay, so that's another approach, but my point is, you know, this is the way in the case study that a very big school acts when they have a lot of content. This is what happens, even without a policy. I don't know what would happen if they adopted the Bates College policy, but that would be a hard thing to do at a big school like that. Okay, moving on. The other thing I just want to say is that if you're wondering about, you know, Springer in general, and you think that, you know, these English language textbooks are a big story, Springer Verlag knows how to publish German textbooks, okay, and they get very good use. And we promised to talk a little bit about international. I wanted you to see that, you know, a lot of these German textbooks that have 80, 85, 88 chapters per textbook, when you count up the chapters, it's mega amounts of chapters downloaded of the German language textbooks. They're very popular. So that may not affect your life, but it's part of the worldwide story that the German language textbooks are very good. And actually, the first English one that appears on our portfolio is at the 100, you got to go down 155 books before you come to an English language textbook, and that's Elements of Statistical Learning. But 155 isn't bad when you consider there were 246,000 books downloaded at least once last year. All right, and then the last thing is I had to give a shout out to my alma mater. I talked to Douglas Black at Middlebury, and Doug said, unlike Bates, we kind of take the approach that if a teacher comes to us and says, I would like you to add a book to reserves for my class, they will take a look at that book and think, after this class is done, is this book at all useful for our permanent collection? And if it is useful, then they will maybe go ahead and buy it. But they don't go out and kind of solicit, even though they have the exact same ebooks that Bates has, they don't go out and try to suggest to the faculty that maybe you want to try this licensed book for your classes. But even so, I mean, I wanted to give you a look at one of their reserves. I think it may stimulate conversation if you want to talk about curriculum development, curriculum collection development. I like this course because I want to take this course. I'm too old, but I'd like to take it because you get to see a lot of video recordings. It brings up the concept that you need to curriculum collection development seems to have a lot to do with movies and video recordings these days, and I don't want us to lose sight of that. Also, that a lot of university press books are used in courses that are more multidisciplinary, like this American Studies course, they have differential policies about whether they have an electronic version, and in this case, the NYU Press books that were new, they couldn't get the electronic version. There were a couple of books from MIT Press and UCal Press where they could get the electronic version, and so they had print and electronic. To me, I look at this and I think, doesn't take long. You get to the sophomore level and there's no more textbooks, really, except for maybe the Springer high-level textbooks, depending on the course. That's it for me, and I'll turn it over to Beth, who has some real data from her school.
I have real data from my school, yes.
Yay.
Yeah. Great. I'm sorry about that, guys. So my part of this is talking about what we're doing at UNCG in the area of curriculum development for collections. And just if you don't know, UNCG is a medium-sized school. We have about 19,000 students, and our collection numbers are here. I'm the head of collections at UNC Greensboro, and so I'm going to let you know what we've been up to. Wow. This text is all messed up. Okay, don't worry about it. It's still going to look good. Okay, so course adoption textbooks. Back in 2016, UNCG and East Carolina got a grant to work with different things that we were doing at different campuses to provide try to reduce the cost of textbooks for our students across both campuses. So we had two approaches. The first was to identify and purchase books, like we've been talking about, like schools have been doing at Springer. So we've been doing that. And then another one is on the MiniGrants, that we provided MiniGrants for faculty to give them an incentive to change their course up, to either use OER or low-cost textbooks or the stuff I buy, because they might as well use my library materials since I have to buy them anyway. So that's why we're trying to use these two approaches. So first thing is that we had to have a collaboration with the bookstore to have this possibility happen, to figure out what textbooks faculty put on the adoption list. So what we did was we worked with the bookstore, and we have a partnership with them. And I will have to tell you, it does help if you have your provost backing on this, because they go to the bookstore and say, work with them. So some people have a little bit harder time than I've had, because I have somebody that's very proactive. Thank you, provost. So what we've done is the bookstore sends us the list. Like, we started that about 3 weeks ago for the spring. They sent us the list, and of course, it's not in the very good, it's all in a spreadsheet. It's not even a spreadsheet, it's whatever they do. So I have a programmer that fixes it and makes it work. So we get a spreadsheet, and we go and identify what we've already purchased, or what we have in our collection, or what we can purchase. And then the bookstore list gets updated every week, because faculty trickle in late in the semester to get their stuff on the adoption list for the next year. So once we've gotten all that, then the library orders the things, and then we send back information to the bookstore saying, this is what we got, this is what the library has access to, and they put it into their system. So this is sort of what their system, so I don't have any access to this system at all. As you can tell, though, there's that tiny little thing that says, the university libraries. So if a student actually read what they were looking at, they could tell what we have. And so some criteria for purchasing, of course, is we, want to work with the right publisher. We want to make sure that we have the right publisher and the right edition, because if we don't have the right edition, sometimes that, gets very confusing. The platform allows, of course, unlimited, what everybody allows, some downloading of chapters, and also we looked at the class size, because we can't buy everything. We don't have that kind of budget. Wish I was in NC State, but yeah, I don't have that budget there at Greensboro. But we look at class size. So if we can get something that for a class that has 200 students, we'll do that, versus a class that only has 10 or 15. So you have to, do the best with what you've got as your funds. So just wanted to show you an impact of the eBook purchases that we've had for the last 2 years. That we have a total of eBooks that we bought. We also had identified, over the first year 300. The next year, of course, that grows because we've bought some, and identified, 540 we already had. And as you can tell, if the students enrolled in the class did not buy that textbook, and they would have saved for those 2 years almost, we're getting close to $1 million in 2 years of savings for the students, just buying the textbooks. And the figures are the students enrolled in those classes. So these are the kind of numbers provosts love to see. So I love talking to her about this, and she loves me. So we have a great relationship. It works out really well. So I'm really excited about that. And I just wanted to show an example of a title that we got. Communicating Ethically is a Rutledge TNF title. And we purchased that back in the fall of 2017 for a class. It's a small section of three sections of just about probably 20 students. But it had 993 download and usage for that book. And so we are, so I'm kind of keeping up with more of what's going on in my area with the, not this whole, the whole country, but I'm seeing a lot of ebook usage jumping because I know that the students are finding them. So here's some faculty reactions. What we do is we send an email to the faculty with the link saying, hi, we found this book for you that you had on your adoption list. Hi, you can put it in your course syllabus and, and let your students know as this is another option. We're not telling the faculty they have to use it, because don't do that, because the English department get really mad. So don't talk to the English about this much. But these are the things we got back from most everybody. It was a thank you. This is great. I'll put this in. So faculty were excited about this. And another thing they did is once we had sent that information to the faculty, they came back and they would ask questions like, well, how about this book? How about this book? And so now when those faculty members are looking at different textbooks for their classes, they come to us and ask before they even, put it in on the list. So they're wanting to see if there's an available option for their students. So that it's a great way to have a good conversation with faculty members. So the other thing we've been doing, of course, is the library support for MiniGrants. We give out a $1,000 mini grant for faculty to change up their class and a course. And we give these out usually in the spring semester, so they have all summer to work on it, then they can put that in place in the fall or the spring of the next year, depending on when that course gets taught. And then the support we use for these mini grants is we have librarians help with identifying OER, and we also have collections budgets priorities to support purchasing if a faculty member needs something or requests something through the library with this mini grant. And so we're supporting them with people to help them do stuff and also with the library. And here's some things that I've had requests for from these faculty members, and they're different. They're a little out there. Anybody had to deal with a click wrap issue on their campus? If you're not familiar, it's like if I had a faculty member in she's teaching a non-majors biology class, and so they don't want to buy a $200 textbook that they're never going to, because they're non-majors. So she found a website that she could use for $20 for a student. But we had to get through legal first, because anything that's done on campus that's in the web that the kids have to go to, legal has to sign off on it. And so this is it's called the click wrap issue, and that our university deals with every day. And so there's a lot of this going on, but it helped to get this product called Bio Beyond. So that was the support of the library, helping talking to legal to try to get this worked out. Then I paid for $380 for the math department using their book funds for server support from the college to host a homework option for Math 112. So the homework option from Pearson is going to cost $200. So now the students have a free open access homework thing that the math department is using for 112, and that's a big set of students, a lot of students in that class. And they're going to try to find ways to use it for their other classes too. So all I had to do was pay this amount of money to help keep the servers running over in IT. I thought that was a pretty good return on my investment. Then we purchased, of course, the Encyclopedia of Family Studies. One of my colleagues, she teaches family studies. She said, the new version's coming out in 2018 and spring. I said, as soon as it's out, I'll get it and I'll let you know, because we were waiting for it to be updated. We were going to buy that one anyway, so that was not a big brainer. And then this semester, and I can't wait to talk to the faculty member at the end of December, we paid about $350 for 5 faculty to have a access to, it's called Campus Diffusion, and it's a Spanish teaching tool for students. So we paid for the faculty access so they could look at it and learn about it and try it out. And the fun thing is that it's working, they like it, they're using it. So if we can get into Spanish, and the students, their big cost for this online package is about maybe $4 a month. Not too bad compared to the access code for $350 or something like that. So we're excited about. Those are just weird ways that my curriculum development money, my collections has helped with the curriculum development in those classes. So just a little bit of the return on investment. For that non-biology class, you can see the total savings for that class was $14,000. And for 3 semesters, I told you the majors one was big. So my return on investment was amazing on that one. I did good. And then the Spanish one, this is only 1 semester. We've saved about $3,700. That doesn't sound much, but that's only this 1 semester, 1 class. We're hoping that more of the Spanish faculty will come on board and work with it. So it's like if you get 1 faculty member in, then you can get the other faculty, and maybe I can come back next year and talk about how that changed everything, the Spanish, I hope. And then we have return on investments from our MiniGrants, and we've been doing these for 15, 16, and 16, 17, so we've been doing this for a while now, but the total savings after 7 semesters is over $1,004,000. So I'm very excited about the return on my investment there. And so that's exciting. I can show those numbers to the provost, and she will help fund those MiniGrants. She's always been like, how many people applied? And I'll say 15. She goes, well, how much money do you need? And I'll say 7,000. And, because I have about, a little bit to play with. And she was like, okay, I'll send it over. And so she's been very supportive in these MiniGrants, and we've seen a lot of return on investment there. So these are the quotes from the students and faculty about the MiniGrants. And we do a survey every semester once the MiniGrants have gone through. And my favorite is when I told the class there would be no textbooks, she got applause from the students in her class. She goes, I've never had that happen on the first day of class. Nobody applauds me in the first day of class. So these are just things that the students have said, and they've really been excited about the changes. And the faculty feel a lot more, they have control of what they're doing in their classrooms. They can change things up when they want to. And so we're trying a lot of different things. If it works, great. If it doesn't, we'll try something, but we're always open to trying some different things like outside the regular box that you're thinking of, books and things like that. So we're now going to open the discussion up for y'all, unless we have questions. Do you want to do questions?
Yeah, I mean, we put some questions on the screen that you might have questions about, but we'll just go with what you have. So Oh, and I wanted to say, if you can come to the mic, if you don't mind, because I was in another session and you couldn't hear because the room is pretty big. If you just tell us who you are and where you're from.
Oh, so I'm Pam Bowling from Seneca College in Toronto, Canada. So you had said that you get your list of textbooks a couple of months before the semester starts, and then you said about trying to find any of those that you could get in electronic format.
Mm-hmm.
And you said unlimited use was
Yes.
so do you, in our library, we set about, we just always set about getting them in print format. So do you get the ones that you can't get in electronic format, do you get in print format? And also my other part of the question is do you think that's okay with the publishers? If it's unlimited use, do you think they're cool with that being used as a textbook? Because I'm not aware of that. Of whether
That's
they
a
would
lot
be.
of questions. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm thinking the first one is we do not get the print unless the faculty asks for it because
Okay.
we just cannot afford that. I mean, that's, and also we don't have the space in our library for it. But,
Oh, okay.
but ebooks are easy. Yeah.
Right.
But, you know, we are doing with more of the upper level classes and not except for that one 12 class the non-biology class, you know. But most of the time, these are not your Pearson books and things like that.
So do you get students though saying like, oh, his textbook's free and mine's not? Why don't you have, you know, at the library? Why don't you have my text? Do you have that sort of?
I haven't come across that yet.
Okay.
But
It could-
no
yeah.
students are talking about take him because he doesn't have a textbook. You
Yeah.
know, they talk to each other.
Right, because we try to buy, I love your idea of doing it electronically. I don't know why it didn't occur to us, but we didn't. But we try to, our policy is that if we can get it in print, is what we usually get it, then we will.
Well, we have a lot of students that, it depends on your campus. If you've got students on campus, we have a lot of online classes and a lot of commuters.
Okay, so it would
trying
make
to
sense.
have, I mean, if you're a small private school and everybody's on campus and having,
Right.
you know, that definitely would make good sense.
Right.
I think it's what's best for you.
Right, okay, thank you very much. Thanks.
Other questions? Please.
Uh-oh.
Hi, Kara Cruz Lee with EBSCO. I was just wondering if you've collected any data on whether your program has how your program has affected bookstore sales, and if that might mitigate any anxiety that some bookstores have with sharing this information.
We haven't done that. That's probably a really good thing to do with the bookstore. I might ask them. If you talk to most bookstores that are out there, they don't make a lot of profit off of the sale of the textbooks. They get a tiny percentage, and they only get it that one time. I mean, so they're selling the swag and the other things and coffee. But I think that'd be a great study to do, and I think, well, since we are partnering with them, we could maybe do that and see what happens. Thanks for the suggestion.
Sir, yeah, please, come on.
Hi, I'm Shaun Pave from the University of New Orleans. Hey. I was just curious about your use of your collections budget to fund things like server support and that other language platform. That seems like, so, you know, like for us, that would be a big deal to try to take our book funds and do that. So is this separate money from your regular book budget, or was it?
It's from the book budget, but it's the maths department's book budget.
So
They're
they
the
directed
ones
it that way?
I said, if you want us to do this, can we get permission to? And it's not a huge amount of money. So I'm not asking for thousands of dollars, so that's another good thing. But it is, I talk to them, and they work, and I make sure we have that, an MOU and all that stuff if we need it.
I'm going to interject, even though we're not doing that. But we've sort of gradually, and we definitely don't have any departments that control any aspect of our budget, but we've gradually expanded the definition of collection over time, and so we'll buy pretty much anything that I'll say it, anything we can get away with, right? I mean, I don't think we could buy a server, but we're by like software, any sort of content or even resource that can help you access content will fit it into the collections budget. I mean, it seems to me that as the idea of what a library should be supporting changes, we need to push the idea of what collections are. And at least at my institution, we don't have to ask anybody's permission for that. What we do have to do is justify it as a collection item.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious if anybody would stand up and tell us about
an open education resource initiative that you have been part of that has had overlap with, say, freshman courses or even sophomore courses? Please.
I wasn't involved in it, but at our college, we have.
Oh, they want you to, they want to hear you.
Sorry, I forgot that. Yeah. So at our college, one of the librarians, the librarian that supports the English and Liberal Studies courses, she developed a list of about, I think, 80 possible OERs. And there's one course that every single student at our college has to take. And the faculty can only choose from that list of OER resources. They can't choose anything but that. So that for that particular course, the students don't have any costs for their textbook.
That's got to be huge, because I think from what I've seen of the literature, freshmen spend the most on textbooks.
And then
they get clever, right? But it's a big payout at freshman level. So if one of their mandatory courses is free, then that takes a nice chunk out of their expenses. Yeah.
Rob, do you want to tell what's going on? Sure. I could, but I'm going to let you do it.
Yeah, so I'm Rob Ross. I'm the executive director at NC Live. We're a statewide consortium in North Carolina. So we launched this summer an initiative, an OER initiative. And so we basically did grants for faculty, $1,000 grants to give them an incentive to adopt an open textbook for gen ed courses. So far, we've distributed about 30 of those, and over a 2-year period, we'll save students about $2.3 million. So it's a really significant ROI for us. We're really focused on those first and second year courses where there's high enrollment and lots of sections. Beth has been on our advisory committee helping. But I think several of us, Georgia, Ohio, are doing these statewide initiatives. So I would say maybe to the audience, if you don't feel like you have the time or infrastructure to do it locally, consider your consortium. They might be ready to do something like that, and you can participate.
Yeah. So. I mean, I've certainly heard of cases at LSU and University of Massachusetts where, people are talking in the millions with savings from some of these initiatives. Any other questions or comments, really cases that you want to tell about?
Hi, I'm Suzanne Mangrum. I'm from Middle Tennessee State University. I actually heard you speak on a panel with LSU, Beth, at ALA, and
right.
I was whining because I couldn't get Follett to talk to me. So I was wondering if your programmer would be willing to share the work he does on the goo Follett gives you. But that's just a mini aside, because now I'm working with my provost starting last month to do a grant to do OER. So yay, provost support. But I guess my question, because I've been looking at other schools to do best practices, and I wonder at this point, is this something you can handle on your own still, or are you having to get other staff to spend time helping faculty search for OER? Is it making a huge impact on their workload, and do things have to be reshuffled at this point, or do you think it will have to be reshuffled?
So the liaisons, when those mini grants come through, they're given that information that this faculty member is going to have this grant. And so they put it in they know it's coming. They have, the summer is, we're dead in the summer.
Oh,
So this is good for them to have that time to do, because everything's online and nobody's on campus really. So they're finding they have the time and they want to do it because they know it's something fun. Plus, we've kind of made it the model at UNCG that they're not doing title by title purchasing anymore. We're doing other things, and so they're not having to. We wanted them to not have to deal with the collections as much as they had 10 years ago. So,
Which I'm sure they appreciate.
yeah, so they could
something's been taken
do
off
these
the
fun
list,
things like work with
Yeah.
faculty on whatever that, different
Okay,
initiatives.
and for your collection staff and for you?
We have 2 staff people that work on this, one that orders, they both do ordering, and they just put that into their workflow, and they haven't I haven't seen them have like oh my God, I can't get it done moments. I think
Okay.
they're doing pretty well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and they've actually talked and presented on it too, so it makes me happy when they get out.
might be
Yeah.
of interest. We're a part of the Lewis Consortium in Louisiana that's been doing a lot of different things around OER and also collecting curriculum-based acquisitions. And we're running EBA programs for the first time. We did a pilot with Sage, and now we have 3 other publishers running where we're making a large number of books available statewide. Everybody's exposing them to their campus, and then at the end of the year, we all are going to get an allocation to buy what our campus has adopted as course text. So it's another kind of angle to push the course licensed content out, make it widely available, and then purchase later.
I like that idea.
Are there any people who are working at an institution that kind of is dead set against this idea and wants to talk about that? I mean, the whole country was dead set against this idea not that long ago. But I used to go to conferences in the UK where the big discussion point was, how many textbooks do we buy? The libraries were responsible for buying the textbooks for the students, and the students didn't pay. And then when eBooks came along, they were trying to figure out how many seats to buy and all that kind of stuff. Completely different idea about what the library was for, but no, maybe not the negative cases. Oh, we've got a couple. Yep.
My name's Chris Paddleton. I'm the head of collections at Emory in Atlanta. And we've been doing a lot of different things around this. I mean, we have an OER initiative. We have Galileo, of course, as the initiative. We also do some of the textbooks, the e-textbooks, so the packages from Springer. We've seen some of those adopted here and there. We work very closely and so on. One other thing I think is kind of interesting as well, particularly, I'm talking specifically with the context at Emory, is diversity in syllabi now that are not so focused just on textbooks either. And this is where the library can really come in with a lot of support. Streaming video, as you just mentioned, as one thing. Using a lot of primary source things at the library, Adam Matthews products or Gale or so forth. Statistical data sets like Sage research methods, all those sorts of things that are kind of these big packages of data packages, which also save money for students as well, as rather than having to pick up each of these things individually, as well as like the little green books was a good example from Sage Research Methods, we thought was a great thing because they're not expensive textbooks, but and I think that might be moving away from textbooks as the end-all, be-all, and doing it. We see a lot of that at Emory where folks are really engaging with library resources as part of the syllabus. So not just so much for research and building research papers, but also using those in class as, for teaching. So sometimes I think the dichotomy between textbooks and curriculum development, there's a lot of word choice and contextual differences there. We are supporting learning. It's not just about research, it's just how we're using some of those resources, not just for my next monograph, but also using it to show students in class, make them learn as well. It's just more diversification, I think, I see happening.
Yeah, I'll say we're seeing a lot of exactly the same stuff, especially around primary sources, where faculty are actually building courses around the digital primary source collections that we've acquired, and I think that we've done a great job working with faculty in that regard, and in some cases it's us as the library going out to them and introducing them to the resources, but in many cases it's them hearing from their colleagues about the resources about those courses, and they're coming to us because they say, I heard so-and-so did this course. So certainly with primary sources and some of these other things that we've bought as research tools, they've definitely ended up being used for teaching far more than we expected.
And another example would be I've got APA Style Central, because if you go through an adoption textbook list and you see that APA style guide every time you turn around, I was like, well, this is a no-brainer. We should get this. And so, yeah, that's that. And also videos. Definitely when everything went to the shifting to online, pretty much our foreign language went online only. And so they were, scrambling to have that video that they used to use forever and ever to be available streaming. And so we've been working one-on-one with faculty on that for a long time.
Patrick Carr, University of Connecticut. Back to Bob's question about institutions that are dead set against textbooks. I wouldn't say that's necessarily the case at my institution. We do invest staff time and resources in developing the OER model. But our focus is sort of changing the model. We have a very limited budget for monographic purchases, and sort of made the determination that we really can't scale out a service whereby we're meeting curricular needs. So, we've had EBA programs that have had very significant, use for certain books that are, we speculate, or in some cases know, are being used as textbooks. And in many cases, we're actually not purchasing those materials because our focus, given that scarcity of funds, is meeting the research needs of the university.
Mm-hmm. Yep. We have just a few more minutes if there are any other comments or questions. I think we've covered a wide array of topics here, and that the one that we didn't cover that's out there is different. Some of the university press material is very attractive for course use, certainly, and the electronic availability of university press material, I'm told, it varies greatly in terms of what kinds of things you can do with it. Kind of more limited. And, the university presses are on a different scale. Has anybody had any particular experiences with university press stuff that have been bad or good they want to talk about? No? I was kind of fishing.
I'll just make a comment on that. One of the things that I think for many of us has been an issue from the beginning, and I mentioned this early on in my talk, that for a lot of university press titles, there's a determination made by the publisher early on in the process that this title has a high likelihood of course adoption, this scholarly monograph, and therefore we are going to treat it differently. Right, we're not going to make it available through libraries, or we are going to make it available to libraries, but only on a single-use basis, and that's unfortunate, and it's entirely understandable, right? That a publisher for whom a sale of several hundred is the norm, when they have a title that might sell 10,000 copies, they need to protect those sales. But I think it's really important for libraries and university presses to work together to try to figure out a way to get those course adoption monographs into academic libraries, both for course use, but also just for their original intent, which is for research. Right, these are titles that were written as scholarly monographs, and might have a secondary use as a course adoption text, but they're being sort of withheld from that initial intent because of the market. And there has to be a way of figuring out how to get that content into libraries. And I hope that we can work with university presses to do that.
I think we're at the end. Yeah. So I think that's the end of our lively lunch. I want to thank everybody, and I hope you have a great rest of your conference.